Hi everyone, Hervin here, and in this video I am going to talk about two epiphanies that I had yesterday that make me feel like I am getting better at doing creative work. And what I mean by creative work is anytime I have to create a solution to a problem that I haven't seen or encountered before. For example, in our company, a client might write us an email with an issue or wanting to use a feature of our program that I have never seen or encountered before, or I might need to create an email marketing, or I might need to create a video like this. Essentially, anytime I have to create something and figure it out and I don't know what I am going to say, where I have to, just figure it out. That's what I mean by creative work. So it's been my experience sometimes where I encounter a problem, like again, a client writes an email with an issue. Even though I may not have encountered that issue before, I may not have explained it before, I have clarity around what I want to say, how I want to write the email. So I just sit down and then boom, like I start typing away. And by the end of the work session, I end up with like a solid email draft that I like. And the ideas came to me easily. I just had to sit there and execute it. That's been my experience. And that kind of has been my expectation for what work is supposed to feel like. You're supposed to sit down and then just execute, right? Just like go for it and complete the work. And the reason I think I have that expectation is because when you think of work, or at least when I think of work, I think of like, the dentist sitting down and like fixing a tooth. They're actually working. Or somebody's working at a construction site, laying bricks, like they're actually doing work. When I am sitting down and when I think I am working is whenever I'm actually like doing the typing and just getting the work done. So I guess it has to do something with like getting work done. But yesterday I had the opposite experience. Instead of things coming to me easily, I wanted to write a marketing sales letter for our company and I was struggling. First of all, I was procrastinating before I even sat down to work, because I didn't know how I wanted to write the sales letter, what I wanted to say, how I was going to structure my thoughts to make it persuasive. So it felt just difficult even before I began working. And then when I actually sat down to work, that was the experience. I didn't know what I wanted to say, so I would write out a word or a sentence and then I would delete it. I didn't like what I was writing. I would come up with ideas and I didn't like what I was coming up with, and it just felt like a little bit of a struggle. I felt frustrated. I'm like, man, I'm sitting here. I haven't gotten much work done. I haven't gotten work done. Like, it doesn't feel like I am producing anything. I'm not closer to finishing the sales letter, so it felt like I wasn't working. It felt like I'm not getting work done. And so the epiphany that I had yesterday is that thinking is work. So yesterday, while I wasn't actually typing out the sales letter, I was thinking, okay, what am I going to say in the headline? How am I going to structure this thing? And I would write things down and then delete them and so on. So while I wasn't producing much, I was in my head thinking and coming up with different approaches and thinking, okay, that wouldn't work, this wouldn't work. It just from the outside, you wouldn't think like I'm getting any work done. And that's how I felt. But then I thought to myself, I'm like, this is taking effort. This is work. Even I should be thinking that I am making progress here, because even though I don't have much to show for it, I'm sitting here putting in the work. Like, I could be thinking about anything else. But I am thinking about how would I write this sales letter? Like, I'm actually engaged in thinking. It's not like I'm sitting there, daydreaming. I'm actually trying to think about how I would write the sales letter, how I would approach it, how I would structure the logical thoughts, even though I'm writing things down and then deleting them, which by the end, like, I thought, you know what, I'm not going to delete it. I'm just going to write it and keep, even though if it's a bad idea, I'll just leave it so I could get stuff out and feel like I am actually getting somewhere. But yeah, I thought to myself, thinking is work. Because I mean, if you're actively thinking, I'm not saying if you're just sort of daydreaming and letting your mind go anywhere. What I'm saying is, if you're actively thinking about how to solve the problem that you're trying to solve, that is part of the work. That is work. And so that was my first epiphany. I'm like, this is work. Even though it doesn't feel like I'm coming up with stuff and solving this thing and getting closer to solving this thing because I'm not getting work done, this is still progress. I'm still working. And so that was the first thing. Just resetting my expectation that, in the past I used to think like, okay, thinking is not work. because you're literally, at the surface, it's not like you're exerting effort that is visible, but internally you're thinking, and if you're thinking about something, you're not thinking about something else. So if I'm thinking about the sales letter and how to write it, I'm not thinking about how to do other things. And so that is work. So that was my first epiphany, that work doesn't have to look like laying bricks or fixing a tooth like a dentist, or I don't know, like just like producing stuff. Like that's one type of work, but thinking is also another type of work. The other epiphany that I had is that work has different stages, and that each of those stages has a different way of measuring success. So let me explain what I mean by drawing this out for you. So when I think of work, this is what I thought about yesterday. When I think of work, I used to think about it like this, like execute, getting work done. So I used to think of work, and I used to think of execution, like actually sitting down and typing things out. Getting work done, like seeing the words on the paper and on the screen, and seeing how it's accumulating and seeing that I'm getting closer. So that's how I used to think of work. Or like if you're laying bricks, like you're seeing the wall getting taller, so you know you're working. And I used to think of work as this graph right here. I used to feel productive if, like, let's imagine this is a graph with time and output, right? So the more we go this way, the more time it passes. So I thought, okay, I am creating work, and then like done, right? So that's how work was supposed to feel like. Like let's say in an hour, the first 10 minutes I created some work, the next 10 minutes and the next 10 minutes and so on. Like I'm just outputting stuff. I'm creating stuff, and it's going to be like that. Like if I sit down to work, I start to work and I'm like a machine or something. I'm just like creating output. That's what I used to think work was like. And that's what I used to feel. That's what used to make me feel productive. It's like if I sit down and I'm outputting stuff. Now I see that work has a couple of different stages, or at least like that's how I am explaining it to myself, is that work has a couple of different stages, and each of those stages needs to have different expectations. So let me draw them out right here. So the first stage right here is gaining clarity. The second stage is execution. Okay, so this is what I used to think work was. The third stage right here is revision. And the fourth stage right here is reflection. Okay, so let me explain each of these stages. Let's start with number 2, execution. Again, that's what I used to think work was. That's the part where you actually are doing the work, you're executing things, or ideas you're putting from your brain into the paper, into the screen, into the document. You're actually getting things done. Okay, so right here, you're getting things done. And if you look at a graph, every hour you're coming up with stuff, right? And so it feels like you're in momentum. It feels like you're getting work done. You could actually get into a flow state and get work done there. Okay, so that's execution. And the expectation, I carried this same expectation that I was going to do this at every stage of the process, where I was just going to get stuff done in all the stages. And so if I was at a gaining clarity stage, if I'm not getting things done and if I'm not producing stuff, I didn't feel productive. Now, what I thought was yesterday was that over here, clarity doesn't look like this. It actually looks like you're not producing much, and then boom, then you gain clarity. And that's when things click. Now, it might take a while for things to click and for you to gain clarity, for me to gain clarity. For this stage, what I was thinking during this time, so like this time that I am not coming up with anything, I used to feel like that was a waste of time. I used to feel like, man, I'm spending all of this time and nothing is coming out. I'm not getting closer. But that is part of the work. So the expectation here for clarity is that you're going to try a lot of different things, but you're not going to get much output. In fact, I saw this podcast from 2 YouTubers who were brainstorming about this problem that they were having as to why people weren't subscribing to their channel. Most of the people who were viewing their videos were not subscribers. And so they were thinking, how can we get more subscribers? and they had a brainstorming session that they recorded about this to explain their creative process. And I found it very interesting because I saw that they spent like 3 hours. So they spent about 3 hours on this podcast brainstorming ideas, and at the end of the podcast, all they came up with was like 2 sentences. And I thought to myself, I'm like, man, that was a lot of time wasted and not much output. Like, they didn't come up with much. All they came up with was 2 sentences. Like, I would have felt like that was a huge waste of time, but they were excited about it. They thought that was very productive, and they thought that was a useful meaning for them to come up with these 2 sentences. And that's kind of where an idea was planted for me, which is why I'm even making this video, is because I had the expectation when I'm gaining clarity, so when I'm here on this first stage, that I was just going to crank work out and just get it done. But that's not what the first stage looks like. For clarity, you're spinning your wheels a lot. So I don't know. So if you think of the amount of effort that you're putting in and the amount of output that you're putting in, you have high effort, but not much output, right? So you're kind of somewhere here. High effort and not much output. And that to me felt like a loss, like a waste of time. Now I realize that that's just part of the work. So the first stage of work, which is gaining clarity, is going to take a lot of effort. So just reframing my mind to expect that anytime I'm in the clarity stage, it's not about cranking work out, but rather just gaining clarity. That's going to pay off later on in the execution phase. Because if you're in the execution phase, which, I would jump into execution, but I don't know what I was going to do. That feels awful. If you're trying to write things out and you don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're going to do. It's just like, that's where you're writing a sentence and then deleting it because you don't know where you're going. So that if you go through the process of gaining clarity, which doesn't feel like a bunch of work is being cranked out, it makes it easier in the execution phase. But again, clarity, this is a success. So right here, success for this stage looks different than success for this stage, right? So success in the execution stage is like, how much can you crank out and how fast can you crank it out? Clarity, it's like success and clarity, a productive work session when it comes to clarity is just you can't judge it by how much work you came up with or how much work you cranked out. Same thing. So in the past for me, I've been somebody who doesn't love revising their work. To me, it's felt like, so I get things done in the execution phase, and then when I go to revise my work, I kind of, don't even do a double check sometimes, and I just put out there my first draft. I don't really love the revision. But to me, again, because you're not outputting a lot of work when it comes to revision, you might start out with this much work when it comes to the revision stage, and then you might end up with that much. And so you actually sometimes even just subtract it. So it just doesn't feel like you're outputting a lot of work. So again, that feels painful. You're not in momentum. And the state, so to me, a reframe yesterday that I had is when it comes to the revision stage, success here is not about how much work you're outputting. It's about how great you can make your work, because good work doesn't come out in the execution phase. Good work comes out in the revision stage. And so anyway, so that's the epiphany that I had yesterday, and the same thing with reflection. Yesterday, funny enough, after I got done the sales letter, it took a while, but reflecting on it, I realized that this is the process that I had gone through. And it has just even now, so this video, I've recorded it about like more than 30 times, and I was feeling frustrated because I wasn't getting the video done. And so I would even be 6 minutes into making the video and I would delete what I have made. And it's the same thing. All those 30 takes help me gain the clarity to then be able to make this one take. And yeah, so those were my epiphanies yesterday that I wanted to share here. So when it comes to creative work, thinking is work. And then instead of thinking of work as just purely execution, work is all of these stages. All right. So I'm going to end the video here. If you liked it, leave a thumbs up and I'll see you in the next one.